My name is Tabitha from the services team, and I'll take you through some of the most common errors that the TaroWorks mobile users experience while in the field, as well as show you how to resolve them. So in today's deep dive, we're going to look at these 4 errors, their causes, and how to resolve them. We shall also look at some of the best practices that can help minimize the occurrence of these errors. And then later, we're going to open the session for any questions and comments. Okay. So in TaroWorks, we help you analyze and resolve the errors that your field staff may encounter through our TaroWorks Support Center. And in today's session, we'll look at the most common errors, but through our support center, which I will quickly open, you can search for other errors by either typing their error code, okay, and the article appears, or by typing a message, a sample message in the error, for example, access. Okay, that, or you can go directly to our troubleshooting section where we have articles on how to go about troubleshooting the errors that your mobile users might report to you. Okay, so in today's demo, I'm going to demo those 4 errors using our fictional company called Aquacom. So Aquacom is a social enterprise that works in remote communities. They build wells to provide reliable water sources, and they register community members to each of those well sites. They also monitor to see the impact of those wells to the communities. So for our use case today, Aquacom has sent out their mobile users who are going to the field to track the well sites and also register community members through TaroWorks jobs. Okay, sorry, let me take you back here. Okay, so to demo our first error, which is the 00004 error. So one of our mobile users is going to use a TaroWorks job to register a new community member, and they're going to use the register new website member job. So we're going to go ahead and register this new member. So our task is to add a new member, and today we are working in the region, which is we are working in the Coconut Group region. Okay, so we select the region, and the well number we are working with today is well number 54. So that's the records we are selecting in our drill down hierarchy, and then we proceed to the form where we will register the new member. So the first question we have for this form is to ask the member how long they've been here. So let's say we select the second option. Then we'll go ahead and register their first name, their last name. So pick their gender and pick a date of birth. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and mark the task as complete. And then, so our mobile users have connectivity while they're in the field, and then we'll go ahead and sync to save that record. Okay, so that's how we're going to reproduce that error. So this error, and we have this article on our support site, it occurs when a question that is mapped to an ID field in the form is skipped. So what we can quickly do is look at our form for that for that job. So this is our form. As the admin, if I can quickly check. So the first thing I want to check is on my field mapping, what's the question that is mapped to the ID field. Okay. So my ID field is the region name, and the response is the question 1. So I'll then go back to my form in the question builder, or rather in the skip logic area, sorry, to see how I set up my skip logic. Okay, and as you can see, my apologies, I am in the wrong form. It should be register a new website member here. Apologies. So the field mapping, so the reference, sorry, it was the well number because we are selecting the well site that we are registering the member. So if I check my skip logic here, I'll see that the question 3, which is a response to mark the ID field, is in a section that has a skip logic, whereby we are showing this section if the response to the first question is 1 year. Remember, in our case, the mobile user has selected less than a year. So that means this section will be skipped. And when this section is skipped, it also means the questions in that section are also skipped. So in skip logic, when the questions that are skipped, they will return a blank value to the fields that they are mapped to. So it means in our case, our well number question is returning a blank value, and that's why we hit the error 0004 attempt to dereference a null object. So that's how that error is caused. Okay, so how to resolve this is to ensure that questions that are mapped as reference ID, so in our case, the well number question is not skipped. So one way you can do this is to make sure that to move this question out of a section that will be skipped. So in our case, because a section is being skipped, then we can move this well number question outside this section. Then when you move that so that it's not skipped at any one point, then your mobile users will be able to sync successfully. So always ensure that questions mapped as reference ID are not skipped when you are applying your skip logic. Okay, so in the interest of time, I will not be able to update that now, but that is how you do it. So ensure that questions that are mapped as reference ID are not skipped at any one point. So you either put them outside a section that will be skipped, or you revise your skip logic. Okay, so back to our presentation. That's our first error, the 004. Our second error that we're going to demo today is a 20,014 error. So for this, our mobile user, in tracking and updating an existing website in our Coconut Group area, so the mobile user is going to use the update website job because they want to update the photo of the well. So as part of the updates that we are making on this website is to update their photo. So again, I'll select the region, which is Coconut Group. Select the well number, which is 54, and then I'll proceed to capture the new photo. So I have the well name, just to confirm I'm in the right record, and then I'll click on take a photo. In my photo, okay, there we are. I'll assume that's our website photo. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and mark this task as complete. And then we said our mobile users have connectivity, then we'll go ahead and sync now. So that we can update the photo. Okay, so we have the 20,014, and we try as much as possible to ensure that the information in the error message is sufficient to explain exactly what the issue is, and also where possible how to resolve it. So in our case here, the 20,014 is it occurs because there's an issue with the mapping error, whereby in this case the reference record cannot be found. Okay, so in our case, so if we go back now to our form, so let me quickly take you to the form. Choose well site, update. So because the reference record could not be found. So if we go to our field mapping and then we check what is our reference record. So our reference record is the region name, okay, which is a response to question 1. So it means this region name was not found. So the major cause of this error is because there's an issue in the task mapping section. So remember, task mapping is where we provide values for the forms, or rather we pre-populate values from Salesforce to the mobile user on the form. So if I quickly clone this just to check our task mapping, if I check on my task, so I'll see I have not task mapped the region record, where I'm expecting the region name to be pre-populated on the form. Okay, so that's why the error says that the reference of this value, which is blank, cannot be found. So one thing it's worth to note that this type of sync error, your mobile users should never see, because you should always test your job before you assign them to your real field staff. You assign them to your real mobile users. So it's best practice to always test your job before you assign them to your mobile users. And you now in this scenario, for example, here it means I will not have a successful sync, because for this job I'll need to create a new job where now I can map the region, I can task map the region name for them to have a successful sync. But for the existing job now, they will not have a successful sync, because there's no way I can those jobs can now be uploaded to Salesforce. Another scenario which is still related to task mapping is that you could have a case where the region name, using our example here, was it was supposed to be typed by the mobile user. So if they typed a wrong region name, then it will still throw the 20,014 error, because it will still could not see that record with that region name. So for that one, you can go back to the job and then edit, edit to make it to rectify that record. But for our case here, because we didn't map the region name, we cannot sync, we cannot rectify, and therefore we cannot sync this job. So it's very important that you test your job, using your test mobile user before you assign them to your real mobile users in the field. I'll take a pause here and see, Kelvin, if we have any questions so far.
Not yet, Tabs.
Okay.
Can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kelvin. So to demo the next error, I'm going to quickly log in as a different mobile user. And I'll show you which error we want to demo here. So we've covered the 004 and also covered now the 20,014. So back to our presentation. Okay. So the next error that you're going to demo is the 00005 error. Okay, and like we mentioned, we have more details on what this error is about. So to demo this error, a different mobile user is going to log in, so just like we did here. Okay, so we've logged in as a different mobile user, but they're also still doing the same job to register a new community member. So we're going to go ahead and start that, or rather complete that job. So we register a new member, seeing a new job, add the new member. So same region, the same website. That's for my drill down records. Okay, and then for me to skip the first error, so now make sure to choose the one that is fulfilling my logic. Okay, so let's have the member again. Okay, pick a sample date of birth, and then proceed to sync. Oh boy. Okay, I missed a step here. So this error, which if you allow me, let me just quickly tweak that. And Kelvin, you can let me know if we have any questions.
Actually, yes. Thank you, Tabs. Billy, I'm going to unmute you and then you can ask your question. Thanks.
Kelvin, is Billy able to ask the question?
Let me just ask it for him. Yeah, he's asking. He's saying that he's not really understood the cause of error 20,014.
Okay, I can take that again. So the 20,014 error, so it's caused by, it occurs because there's an issue. There are a couple of causes, but the most common cause is there's an issue in the task mapping section. So remember, for task mapping, what we do, could open that job here. So for task mapping, what we do is we pass the values, or we pass what value do we want, or let me see, what fields do we want to pre-populate on the form. Okay, so mostly what would pass is, for example, the reference, for the reference object that we are using. So let me use our case here. Our case here, we are updating the well site, and here we want to update the photo of the well site. But as per our TaroWorks job, as our TaroWorks form setup, when we are updating a child record, we also need to reference the parent record. Okay, so in our case here, we are working with two objects. The region is the parent record, okay, because where the well site is, and then the well site is the child record. So since we are updating the well site in this case, we are updating the photo. So the region is our reference. So when we mark it as reference, we're saying we are not making any changes to the region. We only want to reference that, hey, we are updating your child record. So as per the form setup, when we mark an object as reference, then the next thing we must do is to populate the ID field. Okay, and to populate the ID field, it must be a response to a question in the form. So in our case, our question in the form is the region name. So we must populate this, the response to this question will populate our ID field. Okay, so this can be done in different ways. One way is to have your mobile users, when they start the job, like have them manually enter the region, okay, which will give a scenario for typing the wrong region, and then we'll still have those sync errors because we'll not be able to find that region, because in our case, region records already exist in Salesforce. We are only referencing them to update the child record. So in our case here, we want to, so we say that to populate the ID field, it must be a response to a question. So because of the feature of the drill down hierarchy, whereby I can pass some records from Salesforce to the mobile user to give them a better experience and to reduce chances of errors. So I am updating I am pre-populating the region name on the form. And that I will achieve that through the task mapping. So this bit here is in the, just cancel here. So when you're creating your job, you add your drill down hierarchy, then you add your task. So in adding your task, this is where you add the form that you'll be using. So, and then this is where you define of the details that you passed from on the drill down hierarchy, which ones do you want to pre-populate on the form. So in our case, for example, we want to pre-populate the well number so that it becomes easier to identify which well site we are dealing with. We also want to show the well site number for the mobile user to confirm that they are actually in the right well site. But then we also want to pass the region because it's a reference. We want to use it as a reference to update the child record, which is the well site. So the issue comes because one, here in our use case here, we have not passed the value for the region name to pre-populate on the form as the reference. So that error shows that it's due to a mapping issue because that reference record could not be found. Billy, let me know if that answers the question. It's more clear now. Kelvin, any response from Bill or Billy? Does that answer the question? Does it clarify the 2014?
Billy, you can unmute yourself, maybe you end. Yes, Tabs, Billy says it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah, there is also another question from Richard. So Richard is asking, what guides you to choose a field as the ID field?
Okay, good question. So as the ID field, if I come back to the form here. So in TaroWorks, we say whenever you're referencing existing records in Salesforce, using our TaroWorks job, you want to use an ID, which we recommend that you use an auto number because it's unique, it cannot be changed, and also it cannot. It's more user friendly than the Salesforce ID, which is about 15 to 18 characters. So and the aspect of the ID being unique and not being able to change, so it ensures that you are referencing the exact record. Okay, the specific record. So whenever we are referencing, we want to mark a record, an object as a reference, and then we want to populate the ID field. So one, we say we need to use a unique identifier so that we know we are exactly picking the right record. And also, like we mentioned, it has to be a response to a question on the form. So that's why we had the region name question here. So we prefer the ID. So an ID should be a record, and I'm sorry, it's not the best example to have illustrated that. I used the region name, but we recommend to use if you are referencing existing records in Salesforce, you use an ID, which is an auto number. So we actually recommend you use an auto number because it is system generated, it is unique, cannot be changed, and it's more user friendly than the Salesforce ID. Does that answer the question for Richard?
I think you can just proceed as Richard is sharing his response.
Okay, perfect. Good questions. Let's go back to, okay, yeah, apologies. So let's go through this mobile user again. Let's open the form, okay. So 1 year, the well name. So this is an example of task mapping where you pre-populate the values on the form. Okay, let's see. We'll go ahead and sync. I hope I synced after making changes. Okay, good, yeah. Okay, so the 0005 error. So this says the job cannot be synced because you do not have sufficient access, and it also shows you which access or which permissions you do not have permission, for which object. So in our case, it's the well site member object, and we still illustrate or give more details on how to go about fixing this issue. So this can be fixed through the profile. So it's about granting the necessary permissions for this mobile user, because what they're trying to do, they're trying to create records in the well site member object. So it shows that they do not have. So I will undo what I did. So I go to setup, I'll go to the profiles. Okay. And then this mobile user is on a different profile from my first mobile user. So go ahead and edit, and then I will grant them the necessary object permissions. So it's a custom object. She's a well site member, so I'll give them the read, create, and edit permissions. Okay, so once I have assigned them that, then I'll ask the mobile user to try again. Try sync again. Okay, so still I hit the same error, but now this time it's on the field level security. Okay, so we do not have permissions for this field, the gender field, on the website member. So we still do the same process, but now we'll check on the field level security. So again, I'll go to my profile. Okay, then I'll scroll down to where we have the field level security, and I'll go to custom all the way to my well site member object and click on view. Excuse me. So on checking my gender, my gender field, I click on edit. So it shows that it's hidden from the user. So that's why they do not have permission. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grant them the edit permissions so that now they can update that record. So once I save, and then now I can ask the mobile user to try again and see that this resolve this error. So again, the process and the steps I'm going through, so we get a successful sync. So the steps that I'm going through, we have the same exactly illustrated on our support site for those errors. Okay, back to our presentation. Okay, so let's dive into a final demo for the 8002 error. And this is an error that occurs when your mobile user enters the incorrect community URL. So this mostly happens when setting up or they're getting set up for the first time. So, and you remember when you're setting up your mobile user, they need the community URL, they need the username, then they also need to have a password, whether they set the password that they need to be able to log in. So let's say, for instance, if they're now supposed to log in onto in a new device. So if something like slight change in that and they try to log in, so that's when the 80,002 error shows. So to resolve this is to make sure that, to make sure that the right community URL, that's what they are logging into. So this happens either at the time of setup or when the mobile user is changing to a new device. Right, so those were the most common errors that we wanted to highlight for today's session. And before we conclude, so to mention just a few best practices that we recommend. So the first one is to always test a new job. So whenever you're designing a new job, always test it before you assign it to your field staff to make sure that no sync errors are expected, like the 20,014 error. So that's one. Then in line with that testing, ensure that you're testing using the security and language settings that your real or your actual mobile users will have. So if you have mobile users on different languages, so ensure that whenever you create a new job, you're testing them, you're testing in those different scenarios. So that's one. So that's in line with testing. Then always avoid deleting or changing objects or fields that are mapped. And it's good to mention that we have this article still on our support site that we call actions to avoid. Okay, so avoid deleting or changing objects and fields that are mapped. So what would happen is that if you delete or make such changes, so we call them unexpected behavior, because one change will bring a different behavior. So you should do this with extreme caution, because it could also lead to data loss. So it's very key that you avoid deleting or changing objects or fields that are that are mapped to your TaroWorks job. Okay. Then it's also important to mention that we are always updating our troubleshooting section on our support site with more courses and solutions to this and more errors. Okay. Great. So I will now pause and open the session for questions or comments regarding what we've covered in this session.
Great. Thank you, Tabitha, for the great sharing. We have several questions. One is from Billy. He's asking if you just get it right. So he's asking, can you have several reference numbers? That is, if you have more than 3 objects.
Mm-hmm. Say that again, sorry. Can I have several?
Can you have several reference numbers? That is, if you have more than 3 objects. So if you have 3 objects, is it possible to have several reference fields? Yeah, maybe that's the right wording.
Okay. So for reference, like we mentioned, is let me know if I answered this right. If we mark an object as reference, what we are saying to the system is that we're not making any changes. We only want to use this as a reference. So, and how do we identify which record we want to reference? We need a unique identifier. So that's why when we use an ID field. So the ID field that we populate here should be a unique identifier. So, but depending on the, so I hope that answers that. We can only use, if I got that right, the ID, whatever field, let me say, whatever field we populate the ID field should be a unique number. And we recommend using an auto number because it's unique, cannot be changed, and it's more user-friendly. So you choose one. So in my case, so I think the best illustration was where we had the well site and the well site member. So because the well site, we use the well number as a reference. So whatever we choose to use as a reference must be a unique identifier for that object. Today that answers the question. Then maybe the other piece to add on to it is that not sure if he meant you can have many objects here and then mark more than one as reference. So that would depend on on what you're building on the form. But we've said that whatever object you're marking as reference is because you're making a change on their child object. So that's why we mark it as reference. Did I?
Right. We wait for Billy's response. We have another one from Michael. So Michael asks, what effect does having multiple repeat sections and regular sections have on mapping fields on a form? Any guidance on how to easily go around this?
Okay, good question. So one thing, maybe the first thing I can mention is to say, so I think for the forms, we want to limit to a total of 300 questions, and we have that on our support site. And I think whenever you're using repeat, whether you choose to use a regular repeat section, I think it all depends on the format of the form or what you want to achieve. But I think that's the main limitation to remember, that we want to limit the total number of questions in a form to be less than 300. So Michael, let me know if I answered your question. If not, I can follow up after this session, because I think that's slightly different, but would like to follow up and see if I answered that right on using the regular and repeat section.
Great, thanks, Tabitha. Billy says the answer was clear. Okay. And we have another one from Richard. He's asking, how can I prevent a duplicate record from being created at data entry level?
Okay, so currently, and I think I think we have a feature request for that. But the way you can do that, I think currently, is to have two jobs. Okay, so have one job that checks whether that record exists. Then if it does not exist, then now create it in a new job. I think that's the current, and to know if Erin is on the line, but that's the current workaround we have for now.
Yeah, I think Salesforce on the Salesforce side, they provide some deduplication functionality. There's also other apps you can install from the App Exchange that prevent that, as well as help with cleanup. The problem is if you run into, break any of those rules, including something like the soft warning functionality they have, that's going to result in a sync error for the mobile user. And so typically in all of our design, when we're talking about the TaroWorks Mobile User, TaroWorks Jobs, we try to err on the side of getting the data into Salesforce. So it's typically, one, it's seen as more secure. So a mobile device could always be run over by a truck or lost or dropped in a puddle of water. And that would, so we look at the data sitting on the device as at risk for that reason. And getting it into the server and into the cloud is where it can be safe. It's also a good design principle that's designed for your TaroWorks mobile users. They're already, have enough challenges of doing their job in a remote place without great access to network. If you can, as an administrator, do something way more efficiently and effectively on the back end versus sacrificing your TaroWorks mobile users user experience, and that's typically preferred. So you can also do like reporting to evaluate duplicate records. But yeah, from the TaroWorks mobile user side, what Tabitha had said is, in the drill down hierarchy, check for that record first, and if it doesn't exist, then create it.
Great, thank you, Erin. Kelvin, did that answer Richard's question?
Richard is responding at the moment, but Michael said that you partly answered his question, but you can always iterate on the same.
Okay, for the regular and repeat sections.
Yes.
Okay, so I think best let's I will follow up with him after this session, because maybe need to do some more elaboration on that. But I'll follow up with him to get more and explain further.
Definitely. I think the same goes to Richard. If you have further questions, Tabitha can follow up on the same, and you can as well reach us out via the support site.
Right. Any more questions, Kelvin?
Yeah, so there is one last question from Billy. He's asking, saying, I would also appreciate if you can share on how to calculate something like participants' current age based on today's date and the date of birth field that is captured in the form.
Or like to show the age?
Yes. Yeah, like how to calculate the age of someone using the today's date and the date of birth field.
Okay, so if I got that right, so that would be a field that you want to show, or rather to see on the record. So that would mean your mobile users would simply collect the date of birth, and then at sync, the age would be calculated on the Salesforce record.
Yes.
That's the question.
It's not a question actually, but it's something that you would wish. Sorry, it's a question. Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Okay, yeah, sure. Actually, that's the best approach for you whenever you're capturing the age, for the mobile user to capture the date of birth. And then what you would do is to use a formula field on the we can call it age, that will take that date of birth and then calculate the age. So we have formulas. That we can use so that we calculate the age. We calculate the age of the. We calculate the age, sorry, to show the age on that record. So we would achieve that using a formula field. I just want to see quickly if I have one set up. If not, I can follow up later. Okay, you don't have that calculated. But what we would do is to just create a formula field. Call it age. So we'd have a formula field, and maybe call this age. And then the return type would return in as a number. And then we could choose to have no decimal place. Okay, and then now here is where we would do a formula. And good thing about Salesforce, instead of reinventing the wheel, a quick search would show us a formula that we can use to calculate the age, so that once we have the formula here, then at sync, that the age would be calculated automatically. And as the days and the years goes by, the record is automatically updated. Okay, does that answer Billy's question?
As we wait for Billy's response, Richard says, thank you. All my questions have been well answered. And then there is so Billy is asking, will date be available in TaroWorks CV data?
Sorry, will it be?
Will data be available in TaroWorks CV data? Maybe Billy, you can clarify the CV part. So he's asking, will the age be available in CSV data?
Oh, the age. So when you export and when you say CSV, I think you're talking about exporting on the form response. So I think the best way to export that data would be through a Salesforce report, because that is where you would be able to add all the columns that you'd want to see, because remember we've put age as a formula in Salesforce, and that age is being calculated on sync or at sync. So once I have the date of birth, then I sync. So by the time when the record is uploaded on Salesforce, then the age is calculated. So the best way to have an export of that would be through a Salesforce report, where now the age field or age column can be added to the report.
I guess maybe one quick thing to add is that if you do want to export a form from the response count, and rather than, you know, what you're trying to capture in your form data is like the greatest and least information, like the current age of the person, and rather the age that they were at that moment that you collected the data, you can also calculate age using a dynamic operations calculation in the form. You could either display the results of that calculation to the mobile user, or you can even just make it a hidden calculation so that it'll appear in your CSV export if it's not like relevant to the mobile user. But sometimes age is also relevant to do like skip logic or make other decisions in the questions in your forms. So you can also calculate that offline on mobile. But if you aren't looking for that point in time snapshot, then doing the formula field on the Salesforce side makes sense. Or you can also do that in addition to capturing the age at the time the data was collected using a dynamic operations calculation.
Yeah, it's a good one, Erin. Thank you.
Great. Innocent is sending a request here, a feature request maybe here. Is it possible to have a counter for a user? For example, if they wanted to know the number of entries they have picked so far from a given list, but if it's there already, maybe some direction to where it and how we could do that.
Counter.
I think the clarification I'd be looking for is, what do you mean by list? Is that like records in a drill down hierarchy? Is it the number of options in a multi-select question? Can you further clarify what list means?
Right. Innocent is still responding. Richard has asked whether this would be the formula to use for the calculation of the date, the age of using the date field. So today in curved brackets, DOB.
We'll just do a quick one. I think we usually use this for our TaroWorks admin training. We just do a quick Google search. So there are different formulas that you can use. So when you pick, so this would be for the Salesforce, on the Salesforce record. This. So, and there are different formulas. So I bet the best way is to test and see if it returns the value you want. But to clarify that this would be the formula on the Salesforce side. But if you wanted it on the form using dynamic calculation and dynamic operation, sorry, then that would be, it would be slightly different in terms of the syntax.
Great, thank you, Tabs and Erin. Erin, the list is of records, say of names to be picked, and also he says that he meant, for example, if an entrant had a long list of names, say of 90, and they wanted to only pick 40, can there be a counter to show that can show them when they have reached the 40 they want to pick out?
Like in the drill down hierarchy? In the drill down hierarchy, no,
Yes.
There's not. So I think that that's a great feature request to kind of have a little count of how many records have been selected when you have, the admin has enabled the ability to select many records in the last level of the drill down. So we'll definitely take that back to the team. As far as like inside your form, whenever you're passing in like a data set into a repeat section, the way that you could know how many rows there are in that tabular repeat or iterations of a regular repeat section would be by using the length function. So that's on our website in the dynamic operations calculation section as well. And the length of a repeat section is how many rows it contains.
Great. Innocent can respond if that has answered your question. In the meanwhile, Billy says that if you wanted to use the date, I guess, for the skip during actual data collection, will it really be helpful?
Sorry, say that again.
So if you wanted to use the age that you calculated for skip during the actual data collection, will it really be helpful?
If you wanted to use the age as a condition to skip maybe a section or question.
Yes.
So then you would use a dynamic operation calculation to calculate the age from the date of birth. And you may or may not want to show that to the mobile user, and then use that to drive your skip logic. Use the response of that question, the age question, to drive your skip logic. So maybe you wouldn't ask like a certain section of questions to minors, or maybe you only ask them to minors. Then you can use the result of your automatic age calculation to dictate that skip logic.
Great, yes, thanks, Eri.
Thanks, Erin. Innocent says that their team is looking forward for that feature. Yeah, I believe that marks the end of our questions for today. Yes. Tabitha, you had anything remaining on your end?
No, that was it, but those were all great questions. And I think they've also given us like what to look for or what to think through for our future deep dive. So those were all excellent questions. Then, of course, if there's any other question, you can always reach out through support or through your customer success manager. Then we'll be able to assist.
Great. Thank you, Tabitha, and all for asking the good questions. As mentioned earlier, this recording will be shared on our website, blog, and YouTube channel for reference, just in case your colleagues were unable to meet, and also just in case you want to review the questions or the demos so that you can resolve some of your bugs. Great. Thank you all for your time. See you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.